Welcome back everyone, and I'm trusting that you're all doing great. In this video I want to break down how I went about creating this 3D muscle car, and it's a model that will be appearing in a few scenes of my upcoming animated short film Smile. It was a very long process, and I can safely say that it was probably the longest thing I've ever modeled. So I want to see how best I can simplify the process so that you guys can somewhat grasp the concept of how it was done. So the first question I asked myself was what type of vehicle I wanted to model. And knowing the style I was going for, I then went to do the necessary research to find the car that would fit the scenes and fit the character. So I decided to use this car, the Opel Manta 1970. And I'll then go ahead to get the necessary references that I want and insert that into Cinema 4D, which is a very simple process. So my first approach was to use a spline method to trace the shape of the car, but that didn't work out because I realized it was limited, so I didn't have the freedom that I needed. So what I decided to do was to use a cube and divided it into some sections, and that would allow me the freedom that I needed to shape it out exactly what I wanted. Afterwards I would then add a few more points so that I could subdivide it and give it the smooth edges that it should have. If I didn't do that, I would have ended up with something like this, looking like a sausage, and that's something that I don't want. Moving on from there, I would then cut out the necessary sections that a car should have, like the doors, tires, windows, windscreen. And our attempt at that was to use that same spline method to get the shape of each section, of course by using the same reference image. And after getting all the splines ready, as you can see here, I will then drop it into a extrude NURB. Thing about it, it's kinda limited in a sense. You can't really shape it out exactly how I want it. So for the windscreen, I used a slightly different method to get that done by using a loft. And with that, I would have way more freedom to move it up and down if I want to scale it up and so on. Just to give you a better example of what the loft can do, as you see here I have a spline, and I will then drop it inside the loft and duplicate it, and I can add as many splines inside the group as possible. There's no limitation to that. And as you notice now, I can then scale it how I want. I can rotate it, I can move it up and down. There's literally no limitation to what you can do with the loft. Alright, so the way how I got those objects now to shape out the sections of the car that I want is by dropping them into a bowl. So taking them out of the bowl object, this is what they will look like. Putting them back into the bowl object, now you get the shape that I really want. In my case, I had a lot of objects that would go under the bowl object, so I had to be cautious of where I placed each object, because putting them at the wrong place could lead to me ending up with something like this, and this is definitely not what I want. So just a pointer to be aware when placing objects into a bowl object. Alright, so how I went about to touch up the frame of the car to get it with a little bit more detail, I went ahead to create a few more points so that I could manipulate the shape of the car, and of course while looking at the reference again. And one of the parts of the car that stood out most was a bulk that it had in the hood, so I tried my best to give it that feature while at the same time not giving it too much detail. And then to move on to some of the smaller details of the car, like the front grille. Looking at it now, it might be, kind of intimidating or look like something that was hard. But to be honest, it was just some simple shapes put together in a certain way to get it to look like how it is. So what I used was a cube, and what I'm trying to do here is to match it up to the front of the car, because that's where it would be. So I had to cut points, I had to rescale, I had to move, I had to rotate certain points to get it to match perfectly as how it should be. And I would use the same bowl method to cut a slot in the front, and I would then squash it in a way and then stack them on each other. Yeah, to give it a grille look. So the materials and the textures that I used is what really sold the look. That would convince you that it's actually a front grille. So yeah. And then moving on to the tail lights. And this is the same method that I used for the headlights. And as I said before, it's just some simple shapes put together to create something looking kinda sophisticated in a way. So I literally used a cylinder with some small subdivisions to give it a round edge, and the same thing for the back bumper. It was a cube shaped out how I wanted, and then giving it some round edges. And then for the tires, pulling it apart would allow you to realize that it's very simple and it's not as complex as it looks. It's literally made up of cylinders and tubes. Yeah, so as I've been saying from before, it's just a compact of simpler shapes put together to create one big complex thing. And then here's another look at the complete model after adding, some textures and materials to finish off the look. Yeah, so I want to thank you guys for watching. I'm trusting that you'll continue to remain safe, and I'll see you in the next one.